Hi there, and welcome to today's talk in the Healthy Hormones group. My name's Sally Varley, and I am a fertility and menopause specialist. And today I'm talking to my friend Bethan, who suffers from PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And Bethan is on a mission to raise awareness of this condition because it's actually really common, and to reduce the stigma that can surround it, because it's quite a lonely place to be when you may not necessarily have much information about what's happening to you, or even know if that's what is going on. And also, it's September, it's PCOS Awareness Month, so we just thought this was a perfect time to have a conversation and share some info and tips with you. So welcome, Bethan. Thank you so much for talking to me today. And would you like to just start off by telling the viewers a little bit about yourself and why you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah, thank you, Sally. I'm really excited about the opportunity to talk today. Thank you for the opportunity. So I'm Bethan. I am 36 and I have a little girl. She's 4. And basically, I thought that I had loads of little problems that weren't really connected, and then I realized actually the issue was that I had PCOS. Even though I already knew I had it, I never really understood that all of the symptoms together were part of that. I was told very little information about it when I was diagnosed when I was younger, and now I have basically empowered myself and self-educated and learned a lot about it, and I want to share that message and get that out there to women who are suffering from it, because I wish I'd had a helping hand, and I kind of feel a bit like the medical community fail us quite a lot, and that there is a lot better research available and more success stories out there for naturopathic methods, which is just something that, unless that's sort of ingrained in you and your personality and your values, people don't tend to approach it. We're very much brought up on, if there's something wrong, go to the doctor. And then what do you do in the case when the doctor can't help you or won't help you or doesn't know the answer and just says, oh, you're fine? Like when you've had asked for test results and you've had them back and they're normal, it doesn't mean the symptoms go away. You're still suffering those problems, and yet the doctors seem to be, I don't know whether it's ignorant or they just don't have the knowledge. I know that there's not a lot of training and available, and I know there's not a lot of funding available for it. But that's why, since I've learned a lot about the other way and the other method and the things that can work, and I'm my own success story, which is really empowering, I just want to get that message out there and share it to as many women as possible.
Yeah, and that's fantastic, because, you know, that's why I do this work as well, because I know that there are so many natural ways to not only prevent but also to limit or reduce or halt the symptoms of all these different conditions that we have. And it's so maddening when clients go to the doctor and they have these tests and they come back and they're like, he's telling me or she's telling me I'm normal. And that client knows that they don't feel normal, they don't feel well, they've got all sorts of things going on, and it may be that they're sort of very close to the threshold of falling outside of the normal range, but they're still just being sent away either with medication or, like you've said, not very much advice about what they can do to help themselves. And I think the problem is that obviously GPs are, you know, they have to know a bit about so many things that they often don't go into very much depth. I mean, I feel quite horrified. I've actually got a client who's a GP, and I asked her once how much time they spent studying nutrition. And I said, oh, you know, was it like a term or something? And she went, oh, God, no, like maybe a morning or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's horrifying. And
It
and the other thing is that I think people feel frustrated that they go to the doctor and they're saying, well, all they're doing is giving me drugs, but that's all they can do. That's their only solution. So if you want to do things differently, you have to take a different path, and you have to be willing to explore and to be open to other methods and try stuff. And I really am passionate about teaching women that we really have agency over our bodies, and we don't just have to listen to the medics, and you don't have to suffer every month. You know,
100% agree.
you have to keep suffering. So let's just explain to people, what exactly is PCOS and how does it get diagnosed?
Okay, so PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome, like you said in our intro. A lot of the misconceptions around it are that it is just a fertility problem, which it is, but it's not just that. It's actually more basal than that. It's a hormonal and metabolic disorder, and it's actually quite staggering how many people it affects. It's over 200 million women across the world. It's 15% or 20% of the female population in the world, and the UK figures are actually 1 in 10. And then also, rather awfully, it is the leading cause of female infertility. The problem that we seem to face, I'm on absolutely loads of PCOS community groups, and I see it several times a day, how dismissed that women feel because they go to the doctor, they seek help for different symptoms, and there's a huge range of symptoms which I can go into, and they just feel like there's no help. And basically, if you are of like sexual maturity, you are often just given the pill. If you are suffering from irregular periods that don't ever seem to regulate after puberty, then you're given the pill. And the problem is the pill only does the regulation part of the period. It doesn't do any of the other things to support the rest of the symptoms. And the symptoms at the base are the main issue, and they can be regulated through natural methods.
Yeah. And can I just actually say that, in fact, the pill is not really regulating the period. When you stop at, for a few days at the end of the packet, that's just a withdrawal bleed. It's not
exactly.
It's not actually a real period. So if anybody watching is on the pill, because sometimes I get a new client and this is part of the consultation, and I'll say, do you have a regular cycle? And they're like, oh yes, I'm on the pill. And it's like, well, that's not really a period, but and of course that's an endocrine hormonal disruptor, so in itself, so it's kind of adding fuel to the fire, isn't it, really?
It totally is. I actually wrote a blog post about this the other day, how it actually can contribute to PCOS. People can get PCOS from having taken the pill for so long because it's forced their periods into that cycle, and then when they take themselves off it for whatever reasons, they then have a terrible time trying to get themselves back into any sort of regularity because their body's just so confused. The funny thing as well that people don't tend to understand is that there are actually several types of PCOS, and they're actually called phenomes, and each one of them requires different treatment. So again, the one size fits all approach that the medical community seem to give us is just completely inadequate. And then the other thing as well that's really like rubbish about PCOS is that the other symptoms that we all tend to have in varying degrees are all really debilitating. So it's not just about I've got irregular periods or I've got cysts on my ovaries. There's so many other symptoms that women face every day that are literally a daily battle that cause so many other problems, make them feel completely crap about themselves, give them body dysmorphia, lots of stresses, make them feel like they're not really a woman because they have high androgens, for instance, which is an excessive amount of male hormones. And it can cause just like a lot of different self-esteem and confidence issues because of the other symptoms that they face.
Yeah. And so let's go back to how it all began for you. What was happening and that led you to kind of seek a diagnosis, and how old were you when you got that diagnosis?
Okay, so I was actually 19 when I was diagnosed, and it wasn't through any sort of checkup for symptoms or anything like that. It was because I went to university, and the university doctors do a health assessment on you, and they were actually pretty shocked to learn that I had been given the combined contraceptive pill by my family doctors. At the time, the only sort of warning signs they might have had is that I suffer from migraines with aura, so the visual effects that you get with that, and they're actually a sign of excessive estrogen levels. So they're basically they were saying to me that you shouldn't have been given the pill because of the additional estrogen that's within that, because that can cause like adverse effects later in your life if you continue to take it. So I was taken off that pretty quickly and given like a progesterone only alternative, but no further advice. And so I was left to struggle with worsening irregularity of my periods, which continued for many, many years, and just left to deal with it, basically. And then I was also referred to the local hospital for an ultrasound to check on my ovaries and see if there was cysts, and that was confirmed on the ultrasound. So I was diagnosed with PCOS. But like many women face, I wasn't given any other information. So I just was told that I might struggle to have kids one day. And if that, when that time comes, then there will be help available. But that was it. And because I was 19 and I was just going to uni, I really wasn't that bothered. I was just, carried on living my life in not so blissful ignorance for a while. And that's kind of how it sort of came about. And I didn't really do anything about it. And I learned a lot later that it's this year that I've learned all the things I've learned recently. And there's so many different parts of me and symptoms that I had, and even personality traits that I just thought were me, just thought were things I had to deal with, just things that I had to put up with. And actually now, after implementing different methods and recognizing and identify what my symptoms are, there's just been a huge shift, and I've managed to overcome a lot of them, and I'm still continuing on that journey. But literally, like, from being 19, I'm 36 now, half of my life, like all of my adult years, never knowing, being like completely ignorant to it because I was never told anything. And a lot of the research that I know now was also not available at that time. This research has been made available in the last 10 years. The doctors in naturopathic medicine that have been pioneering this information and these studies, they've been doing that in the last 10 to 15 years. So now it's available, but you have to look for it.
Yeah, so I was going to say that because obviously it's nearly 20 years since your early experiences of realizing that things weren't quite right with your hormones and your body, and that hopefully things have progressed a lot since then, and that there is more help and information available, but it still sounds like it's sort of quite a murky arena where people don't really know what's going on. I mean, in my work with fertility and so on, I'm shocked at how often I ask a woman, how long her cycle is, and she doesn't necessarily know whether I'm talking about the fact that actually means from the day of you start your period till the first day of the next period. It's not how long your period lasts. And, and I look back on when I was in high school and going through puberty, that was 30 years ago, and I don't remember being told anything, really. We probably had a couple of biology classes, and I mean, I think that these days they are teaching school kids about things like the menopause and more info about the body and how it works, but there's still a long way to go. And so you've, as we know, you've got your lovely little girl. Did you in fact find that your fertility was affected when it came to
No, and that's what's also kind of strange. And if the one bit of advice I was given was you might struggle to have kids, and actually when that came about, it wasn't true. So I was I haven't even worked this out. She's 4 now, so I was 31 when I was pregnant. And basically we tried for 7 months, so that's a pretty normal average amount of time. So I know I'm so lucky, and I know I'm especially lucky to have PCOS and have a daughter without having any problems. But for us, actually, when I started tracking my ovulation through an app, I can't remember what it was called, I was really shocked, actually, because my cycle wasn't as long as I imagined it was. I'd always just got by on knowing that, they're really irregular, and they obviously had regulated themselves over time to a certain point, but they were still long, and they were still plus 40 days. So my cycle was longer and classed in the PCOS sort of realm of how they categorize it. That is a delayed period. Thankfully, it wasn't absent, because obviously they can be absent for a lot of women, and that can obviously be a contributing factor to the infertility. But for me, yes, they were long, but they were still there, and obviously I was actually ovulating, and they weren't just a breakthrough bleed, because I was often worried about that too. without being too gross, sometimes when I would bleed, it would be very dark in colour. So I would worry that I was storing like old blood inside, and like, oh God, how am I going on with that? And am I just filling up with it? It was awful thinking about those kind of things. But thankfully it all happened really well. And she's fine. But for me, the actual problems that I had were to do with my type of PCOS and the additional horror that comes with having insulin resistance, which again I've only discovered this year. So for me, I put my mind back into my life experience. I've always had really high sugar cravings. I've always had a sweet tooth. I could always eat 2 puddings. I've always craved bread or pasta. And yeah, I've never really known that was the reason before. I remember being pregnant and my cravings were insane, and I got really big really quickly, and I had to eat standing up, and I couldn't eat big meals because I felt full already. So I would just snack all the time, and I'd snack on chocolate, and basically mini eggs were my favorite thing ever. And I basically went and got loads. She was born in May, so there was a lot of mini eggs around towards the end in my 3rd trimester. And I literally remember going and asking my boyfriend to go and get me loads, and he bought me like 30 bags of them one time. It was a joke, and I literally went through them during breastfeeding and stuff. It was so bad. And I remember that I put 5 stone on during my pregnancy, which is insane. But obviously if I'm craving all this sugar and I'm craving all these carbs and I'm giving into it because I just feel like my body needs it doesn't feel like just a small hankering. It really felt like your body is desperate for it. And so I would just give into it, because why not? And you need to make yourself feel better. And I felt a bit weak as well. I felt like I just needed the sugar. I needed something to make me feel better. And sometimes I would probably have the hypoglycemic effect, but I didn't know that's what it was. I just felt weak, so I'd have more. And so obviously with this, now that I know what I was doing, I was damaging myself constantly, and I didn't know that. And putting all that weight on just exacerbated all of the issues that I had, that they might have been like low level inflammation and the insulin resistance that I didn't like realize that I had, blood sugar issues, and maybe even thyroid dysfunction. But all these things were just getting worse and worse because I was giving in and putting the wrong things in. And then when I had her and I was breastfeeding, the same thing happened again. I remember going through 4 or 5 hobnobs a time every feed, because I felt like I was being drained. And so I would like top myself up, and they were convenient and like available, not advocating it at all. I just didn't know. And since having her, and she's now 4.5, I've really struggled to lose any of that weight. And actually I tried so many different methods of losing weight. As soon as I was signed off from the 6-week health check to be able to do exercise, I did a Boogie Babies class, I did Pilates, I did Mama HIIT classes, and then I joined the gym that we met at, and
where we met.
I joined that, and that was probably the worst decision I ever made because of what it did to my body, but I didn't know that at the time. And so like now I know that I have like naturally high cortisol levels and insulin resistance. I have to really look after those parts of me and not add fuel to the fire. So I have to do more passive exercises, not do anything that spikes my cortisol levels even higher, and not anything that's going to cause more inflammation. Because when I did the classes that we met at, when I used to do like hour-long sort of HIIT sessions and really high intensity exercises, I put all my effort into it. I did everything I could because I was desperate to lose weight, and I just felt so deflated and humiliated a lot of the time, because people were bigger than me, making better results and overtaking me with their like weight loss and their toning, and I was doing everything I could. And I really got into the world of taking pre-workout and protein shakes and doing everything they said and following all the good meal plans that I thought I was supposed to be doing everything I thought was right. And I was getting worse. I was putting on more belly fat because of the stress it was causing me. And basically it took me nearly a year to realize that. But when I did and I stopped, things settled slightly, but I didn't really lose any weight. And then it's been another probably 2 years since then. And then now I've had this like epiphany this year where I've actually really understood what all these issues are and like why it's happened and how to support the symptoms.
So there's so interesting, all of that stuff, and just for the viewers benefit, they might be thinking, why were you putting on belly fat? So basically what happens is when we release cortisol, which is the stress hormone, when our body's in this kind of fight or flight mode, it binds to insulin and it fixes fat around the stomach. So this is often why women in menopause tend to gain weight around the middle and kind of thicken around that area, which none of us really want at any point, because we all strive for the flat tummy, don't we? But actually that's what's going on there. So if you're somebody like Beth who's got high cortisol levels already and this insulin problem, then that's just dead ringer for putting on weight on the tummy. And from a Chinese medicine perspective, everything ties in with what you're saying about having this longer cycle and some of the darker blood and things like that, because we look at things like heat and cold in the body, something called damp, which when we're really sort of talking about how it affects the body on a kind of energetic level, but also physically how the organs function and work. And in the UK, because we're in a damp climate, that doesn't help for starters. Secondly, our typical diet is very damp forming, so things like dairy, beer, greasy foods, carbs, all of that sort of thing contributes to this damp constitution. And when that becomes chronic, it can actually manifest physically as lumps, cysts, tumors. So that's why we see people who, we would describe them when they're overweight, sluggish, lethargic. You might have a lot of brain fog, you might have a lot of fatigue. This is a problem. Yeah, the spleen and the pancreas are responsible for managing your insulin levels. In Chinese medicine, the flavor of the spleen is sweet, so you crave sweet stuff. So it all just ends up with you in this kind of vicious cycle. And also one of the ways that it affects your fertility is because this damp slows everything down, so it can hinder the release of the egg, and it can also kind of even coat the egg in a kind of damp mucus layer that makes it harder for the sperm to penetrate. And it may mean that the egg takes too long to get down the fallopian tube. So instead of, if it does fertilize, instead of going down and embedding in the uterus, it actually implants in the tube, and that's when you get an ectopic pregnancy. So women with PCOS are more likely to have an ectopic pregnancy. So I think it's fascinating.
It is totally fascinating. It's awful, but it's also like I've become completely obsessive about this now. And
so what happened? You've mentioned a few times that you've had a sort of epiphany in the last year. So what happened? How did you?
Well, I basically reached rock bottom with my symptoms, a complete unhappiness with myself, my body. I was a crabby, horrible, moody person. I was so stressed with everything going on at work and felt like I was completely depleted when I came home. I didn't have the energy to really be present with my daughter, my partner, and I just felt like I was failing. I felt like such an awful, rubbish person, and it just got me in this horrible cycle. Like you mentioned before, brain fog is definitely a symptom. Adrenal fatigue. I also have sleep apnea, which is basically when you feel knackered all day, but you actually can't go to sleep at night. So it just adds to the problem, and it becomes again like another vicious cycle of the symptoms. So after like reaching rock bottom and feeling just awful about pretty much everything, we went away for Christmas, so I had a bit of a break. I had a pretty intense month in December with work and a deadline that we had to work on that was completely insane. So I was working lots of long hours and didn't really enjoy the run up to Christmas, which was rubbish because I've got a 4-year-old, and all the Santa things and everything are gorgeous, and I just felt really tired and had no energy. Yeah, reaching rock bottom, felt totally crap. I'd been having loads of tests at the doctors. I've been researching little bits and asking for more tests each time, and I'd gone so many times and had so many occasions where I basically cried at the doctor, just felt complete despair, and just felt really unsupported. Like, even if they listened and even if they ordered the test would always come back normal, and then the doctor would just be like, "You're normal," and then as if that's it. And I'm like, but I'm desperate. This isn't right. Like, how can this make sense? How can I, for instance, go to that gym that we met at and do 6 a.m. sessions, 3 days a week, burning probably 800 calories a time, and really intense exercise, and lose or gain no weight, and then stop doing that and not lose any weight? What can be going on with that? It makes no sense. It was strange. So there were so many things that I couldn't get my head around, and I just felt so lost and so unsupported and not represented at all, that I just thought, I've got to do something, like, because I am going to end up the size of a house, even more unhappy. It's going to affect everybody else in my life. I just couldn't deal with that fact anymore. And knowing as well that now it actually can lead to really severe conditions, I really wanted to make sure that I was safeguarding myself, and wanted to make sure that I was leading a good example to my daughter, because actually I've learned recently as well that PCOS is hereditary, and I have more than likely got it from my mum. So with what I've been learning, I've been sharing with her, and she's actually going through menopause, and she's trying to work out what research I'm giving her might affect her, and how she can adapt it to what might suit her. And obviously I'm interested to make myself better and know more about it as well, because I have a daughter and I'm 40% likely to pass it on to her. So I need to know and recognize the signs, because apparently some people know that they have showed signs from when they're very little. So like in adolescence, before puberty even starts. So I've got my eye out waiting to know what there is, and to try and work out what I can do to help her, so that she doesn't go through her adult life with the struggles I've had. But so since I had this break at Christmas, and basically just took a big deep breath and really thought about, right, how am I going to attack this? What do I need to do? And because of the way I felt about medicine, and not very confident that they were being very supportive and all that kind of stuff, I thought, well, it makes a lot of sense to me to go down the natural route. So I'll try and look at people who have done things in a naturopathic way. I'm very interested in holistic remedies as well. So those two go very hand in hand. And I think sometimes medicine doesn't do that. I think that, yes, we're very lucky. I think the NHS is absolutely wonderful. They were brilliant when I had my daughter. So I'm not like bad mouthing them in any way. But for this issue, they don't really service it very well. And there just isn't a lot of knowledge there that's available. And there is a lack of funding. So it's just, unless something changes, it's always going to be this way. And I don't want to be almost like a victim of that. I want to do something about it. So I basically did some research and quickly came across some resources and some books from some leading doctors in the field that always ended up being Canadian or American. They were female doctors, they had PCOS themselves, and they'd overcome their symptoms by applying naturopathic and holistic approaches to their healing. And this just literally spoke everything to me. And I was reading their case studies in their books, and it was like reading my life. I've never had anything before resonate so much. I could have cried. I read the books that were more than 200 pages, cover to cover, in a day. I was obsessed. And I got a pen and paper and just jotted everything down, and I marked up in the book all the symptoms that they talked about that I experienced. And realised on a scale that I was severe in some areas, moderate in others, never low in other areas. It was always severe or moderate. So I thought, this is it. This is definitely it. There's got to be something here that I can do. So this happened in January, and I made a few dietary changes. I was already changed the year before, and I went vegan. I'd started dabbling with vegetarianism for a while. And then I decided to be vegan. So the first thing that a lot of the PCOS resources in this way talk about is start eliminating some foods from your diet, because they cause inflammation. And I'm sure you're very aware of it, Sally. But dairy is a big factor for inflammation. And as I was already vegan, I'd already cut a lot of that out. The next thing was gluten, and I already had reduced that quite a lot, apart from when I was on my period and massively going through the cravings. But like gluten for me, whenever I had a pizza base or if I had bread, I would suffer in an hour or two later with awful gastric problems. So I knew it was that anyway. So it made a lot of sense, and it wasn't difficult for me to eliminate them because I'd already sort of started that process. Once I'd done that totally, and then also adopted a more considered whole grain approach, I lost about 7 or 8 pounds by the end of February. So like in a month. And for me, that was so phenomenal, because that was more weight loss in a month just by changing a few things in my diet than I'd lost in that whole year spent killing myself at a gym doing HIIT exercises and high intensity kind of programs. So obviously that was like a light bulb moment and a bit of a, oh my God, like something is working. I'm going to continue this and see where it can take me. And from there, I continued to identify my symptoms. And then I worked on like other types of elimination. And because I have the insulin resistance part, I had to be really careful about carbs. Now, that is not for everyone, and a lot of people have a whole, oh my God, don't talk about no carbs and all that kind of thing, and that's fine if people don't want to do it. But for my specific experience, the carb and sugar thing that happens to your body, it all affects insulin resistance. So my body works better with a very low carb diet, and I dabbled with a few different things, and I continue to do that now. I've had amazing results since I've done it. So in this year of adopting a few different things and taking different supplements that I've read about, worked out what might work for me, and decided to just order some, research it, order the ones I think are the right ones and try them. And I know some people might think that's a bit risky or maybe a bit brave, but for me, I just thought I've wasted so much time trying what doctors say and no one's ever helped me, and I can't have the pill, I can't do this, I don't want to take a diabetes drug that might help or might not help and might also cause me other issues. I don't really want to rely on medicine. So this for me was less risky because supplements, are the ones I was choosing, were natural, they had good reviews. I tried to get all ones that were UK based, that had stricter guidelines and things like that to follow. And I basically just researched them and took whichever ones I thought were the right ones, and just tried trial and error, because at the end of the day, that's what doctors do. They don't know what is going to work for you. They just know that something works for someone. And so I tried the same thing. And I'm really happy to say it has worked. Like, it's taken a lot of effort, but I have managed to create some really good successes. So from the whole year of adopting all the different things that I've done, I've managed to lose almost 2 stone in weight. I'm 2 pounds away from the 2 stone mark, which amazing. I'm super happy about. Yeah. And it's mainly got off my tummy. It's so good. I used to have like a proper, under my boobs, proper like concave belly, and now it's like flatter. I'm so excited about that. And I've managed to regulate my periods down to 30 days, which is insane. Yeah. So I'm super happy about that. And I have less inflammation, which I know I have because I have suffered really terrible back pain in my lower back ever since my daughter was born. Since throughout pregnancy, I used to have to go for a massage once a month, like a really deep tissue massage, and I'd have so many knots in my upper back because they were compensating for the weakness in my lower back. I haven't had a massage in God knows how long because of obviously COVID. Yeah. But I haven't felt the need for one really either. So I might have one next week when I go on holiday for the relaxation part of it, but not for the pain. And I have noticed the difference of literally, if I've had a weekend where it's been someone's birthday and we've eaten cake and ice cream and I've gone off my sort of low carb plan, I've noticed a few days later that my back pain has returned. It's mainly for me when I sit down to standing up, I'm like an old lady and I'm like, oh, my back. And the worst one is if I'm trying to shave my legs in the shower and you fold forward, and then when I get up, I get to about 45 degrees and I'm really screwed. I can't like lift myself the next bit. So that goes completely with the diet changes. And my stress and anxiety and brain fog are like normal. Like I've not had a test for this, but like I feel less stress, I feel less anxious, and my brain fog was pretty terrible, concentration levels, all that kind of stuff, and now it isn't. And I have fewer migraines, which is amazing. And there are a few other things as well that I'm noticing they're a little bit better. Like my hair quality is better. Like it started to go really dry and it wouldn't grow as long as it was before. And I put that down to it too, because of like the differences with the hormones that you can get in your hair and your hair follicles and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been amazing, and I'm still on the journey. So it's not complete. I'm not a fully fledged, like reduced all my symptoms, but it's part of the process, and I feel really empowered because I've managed to do these things with research, and I've done it myself, and I'm an advocate for supporting yourself and empowering women. And yeah, I hope that it basically inspires other women that have PCOS and gives them hope to know that you can make positive changes yourself, and you don't have to rely on doctors and drugs. And the differences out there in naturopathic and holistic remedies are huge in terms of success stories, and I kind of want to live and breathe that and shout about it and hope that it makes a difference to other women and helps them to heal too.
Yeah, well, it absolutely, I mean, it's so inspiring listening to you, and you look absolutely radiant, and I know, I mean, obviously we haven't really seen each other for the last year and a bit because of COVID and everything, but we did catch up once or twice before all that, and you know, I saw you in those times when you were just like, I'm desperate to lose weight and nothing seems to work, and I've been doing all these workouts and it's not helping, and that is just so depressing, isn't it? When it's not like you just sat at home eating hobnobs, you were trying your hardest. And so it's really amazing that you decided to just kind of push through all that and keep searching and keep looking for a different way, and you found something that works for you. And I can tell how much effort you've put into it. And I think this is the thing that I mean, some people might be watching thinking, oh my God, I couldn't possibly do all those things. But actually, in my experience of working with clients, because I offer food sensitivity and environmental sensitivity tests, and often when something comes back and they're just like, oh, I can't give that up, it's my favorite thing, you know, but actually when they do, they feel so much better, that even though they might miss the cheese or the chocolate or the milk or the whatever the thing was, they get used to it, and the clarity of mind, the feel, like the reduction in anxiety, or the ability to just go out for the day and not think every 5 minutes where's the nearest toilet because I might have to suddenly go, you know, any of those things, or feeling pain after eating. People sometimes get awful stomach complaints and they don't really know what sets them off, and it seems to be a bit random. And like we were saying at the beginning, I just don't want people to be suffering. You know, it's not okay, and that's not what we have to accept for our lives. So I think I know that you are going to do an amazing job to spread the word, and I'm going to help you. And you know, yeah, because you know, I'm all about helping women. That's what I want to do. I don't want to see women going through miserable lives and just feeling like you said, you know, that you were just crabby and irritable, you couldn't concentrate, you just felt rough all the time. That is not a way to live, is it? No. So
and now you know the other side of it as well, like you know that is so bad, you shouldn't have to go through that. And women are so used to getting on with it, and I think women are like that, and then I think mums are like that on steroids, because you don't have the time.
No.
And like I know that maybe some of the people listening to this might think, how the hell do I start with this, like how do I identify this research and stuff? Well, I can share some of the resources that I found really useful. I don't have like any affiliate links or anything like that for them. They're not in my interest to share. I just want to share because I want to help people. And I wish someone was able to do that for me. But it's not like when you read the books and you find some communities that can help you and that you can be part of, and you don't feel singled out as being different or wrong or broken, then you can actually feel more empowered, and it spurs you on. And it's just reading books and giving you that knowledge. And yes, it's a little bit of time, but it's not, you know, you don't have the time in the rest of your life to suffer, and you want to be a good example to your kids as well, and you want to be able to enjoy that time with them. Like, I don't want to have to spend the rest of my time not being present with my daughter because I feel so terrible. So I think it's really important to like pass those things on and help people. I'm happy to do that.
And like you say, you know, if people are taking any kind of medication, even over the counter stuff, it all depletes the body of essential vitamins and minerals. It all has side effects, even if they're not really big things that you notice very much, but you might constantly have a bit of a runny nose, or you might have a rash, or you might have something that over time it's just running your body down, and it's really just putting a band-aid over the root cause of the problem. So that's what we've done, is go to the root cause and address that, and that will see you through, you know, the rest of time if you stick to it, and to pass it on to your daughter. Whereas if you were to take medication, then maybe not now, but in 5 or 10 years time, you'd start to notice other things creeping in, and then, you know, could end up in a not very sort of healthy state later on. So really, I think also it's like anything. I mean, you know, I have studied nutrition and I've been in private practice for 9 years. I'm still learning every single day. I learn new stuff, and you know, 3 years ago I didn't know how to make a smoothie. I just was like, what do you put in them? I can't imagine having vegetables for breakfast, you know. But now it's so, I don't even think about it, because I've just I studied and I learned, and now I can do it without thinking. And you'll, you know, if you're not already at the point, you'll get to that point where all of the things that you take and you do are just kind of second nature, because you found what feels good. And so I think for anybody watching that feels a bit overwhelmed by the thought of like, oh, I don't really know where to start, I mean, could you recommend one of these books that you've read?
I could, but I'd also just say as well, like, some pieces of advice that I wish I'd known were like, remember, you're not alone. Like, if you're going through all this stuff, as sad as the actual fact of this is, you're part of a community of 200 million women across the world that are affected by this. And having PCOS is nobody's fault, and you didn't do anything wrong, and you're not broken. There is definitely hope. There are definitely ways to manage your PCOS symptoms, and there are definitely ways to reduce them. And some of these leading naturopathic doctors in the field of PCOS, they're even finding ways to reverse the diagnosis, which is incredible, because if you ask medicine, they'd say there was no cure. And it's like, okay, there are other ways to do it. And also, like, I had to change my thinking to be, you know, I'm not broken. I'm not in a lack sort of mentality. I don't need fixing. And like you said, medication will only take you so far. And in lots of ways, it can be quite ineffective at solving the problem. And like you also said, it can also lead to other issues that then also need another band-aid to put over them. And so, like, educating yourself is the big key. Like, completely, I can't even imagine how awful my life would be now if I'd have just continued down that path. And I've spent almost a year of feeling more positive, and each month there's been more progress. Like, who doesn't want that? So there is lots of information out there that you can read and look at. You just need to have a look. I can also share some of the resources, that's no problem, and they're also in my blog. And also, you know, self-empowerment, like, you are the biggest expert on you. You might not be medically trained, but you are still the biggest expert on you. So, like, you know, write down the symptoms that you feel, write down how you feel. Like, people always talk about journaling, and I always sort of roll my eyes at it and think, oh, journaling and gratitude and all that stuff. But actually, there are some real benefits to doing it, because you get on with things so easily. You never really realize all these little things add up. When I was reading some of the symptoms for PCOS, I didn't realize half of them were anything connected to it, and I couldn't believe, I was literally astounded at some of the little things like skin tags, and having like slightly redder upper arms, like with that kind of mottly kind of toned skin and slight little bumps. No idea that they were to do with my PCOS and to do with insulin resistance. And it's just crazy to think that little tiny signs, warning signs that your body puts out there to say, hey, something's wrong here, and you don't know, and you just ignore it and carry on exfoliating your arms and carry on dealing with the skin tags, not realizing why. But you know, there is hope, and you are not failing, and you have to just put some faith back in yourself and stop listening to maybe the medics and start taking a bit more control of your health to turn your life around. Because if I can do it, anyone can. And just also like be positive and have some strength, because yes, it's hard, and PCOS itself makes all of the other issues worse. Like, yes, everybody has stress, whether they have PCOS or not. And a lot of people have fatigue. But I think with the other hormonal imbalances that happen with PCOS, they make those things even worse. They exacerbate all the problems and make you feel hopeless. And it makes you feel really unmotivated and like you have a terrible mood, and you can put yourself forward, you can be more of a priority and overcome it. Because if this happened to your husband or your child, you would do everything you can about it, but because it's yourself, you don't. You just get on with it. And so we need to start prioritizing ourselves and working on that better for our future and our families as well, because no one wants it to be the other way. So like through all this, with all the things I've learned, I just want to be like a PCOS advocate and be a positive voice and example to women who are suffering from PCOS, and hope that like my experience resonates and gives them some inspiration, helps them to feel empowered, and hopefully to educate themselves, because you really can heal your PCOS symptoms.
Amazing, you're so inspiring. And I can't wait to see, you know, the response to this video, because I know it's going to help people. So you've got an Instagram account, haven't you, which is
it's at healing_PCOS_mama, MAMA.
Yeah, and I'll put all the details on the video anyway, of your links and where people can reach you. And yeah, I'm sure, you know, this is not going to be the only conversation we have about this, because it will be really interesting to keep hearing about your progress, and you know, as you discover more things that help. And yeah, we just want to keep the dialogue going and keep it open, so that, you know, I feel really shocked by that statistic. I didn't actually know that there were so many women that have it. So
yeah, it's insane.
I knew it was common, but I didn't know it was that common. And like you say, that means, you know, every time you go to a pub or something, there's about 5 other women in there, or any event, who are going to be going through the same thing. And so let's not let people suffer in silence anymore.
Exactly.
Get it out there. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. And
thank you for having me.
That was a pleasure, and look forward to chatting to you again really soon.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, Bethan.